Hi guys, this is jason.com and I'm here with one of the cheapest 5G phones launched in 2022, the realme 9i 5G. I've seen that it's quite popular in India on Flipkart and Amazon, but there's a bit of a mystery surrounding one of its cameras. There's a 50 megapixel one, there's a 2 megapixel macro one, but this one is a total mystery. Some are saying 2 megapixels, others are saying telephoto, others are saying 0.3 megapixels. Anyway, it's one of those sub $200 5G handsets, which comes with a 50 megapixel main camera, a rather large diagonal of 6.6 inches, and it also provides a 90 Hz refresh rate, while at the same time coming with a, I would say, decent MediaTek Dimensity 5G capable CPU and a large 5000 mAh battery. We're lucky enough to have a more potent version with 6 GB of RAM and 128 GB of storage, and I think it's time to start the review. Once again, the price tag is between $150 and $200. Now the design is, I would say, old school with the teardrop notch at the top side and a pretty beefy chin. You can see here we have a flat frame, and the back side I'm still mixed between calling it glass or plastic. I'm pretty sure it's plastic in the end. It has a pretty nice reflection when it catches the light. I see that the camera sprouts straight from the back side, no camera module, much like the Galaxy S22 Ultra. It's also rather fingerprinty, so it will draw fingerprints and grease, but at the same time, thanks to the flat frame, it's pretty grippy, much like the Redmi Note 11 was. Aside from this hue, there's also a golden one and a few others, and if you look closely toward the device, you're going to see some sparkle below the surface. Not sure you're seeing it, but in the proper lighting, there's sparkle. Okay, so that's pretty much it design-wise. It's rather massive, 8.1 millimeters in thickness and 187 grams. And I would say that the buttons here, the volume ones, are a bit too slim to be comfy, while the power one is a bit too receded for my taste. However, there's a purpose for that. It hosts the fingerprint scanner. At least the build is solid, that much I can confirm, even though it doesn't innovate in any fashion design-wise, and it doesn't have IP certification, just so you know. Now the screen you're seeing right here, it's an IPS LCD, 6.6 inch, quite large, Full HD Plus, it's a surprise, and 90 Hz for the gamers. Well, not much gaming here. Screen protection is already applied from the factory, there's a plastic one, and let's check out what the screen can do thanks to this test video. Okay, so while here in front of you it may look fine, in the end it's not that great of a panel. I'm being honest here. I mean, indoors the brightness is fine, the colors are decent, and the view angles aren't half bad. But in the sunlight the contrast is very poor. You basically, once you leave the house, you will not see anything clearly on the screen on account of the brightness being very low. It's a bit washed out color-wise, even though this video may look satisfying when you're met with more complex scenarios like gaming or more complex videos. You'll see some washed out colors and areas. My biggest surprise was that the viewing angles were quite decent, and the reds and the blues were also decently well calibrated. Now we have an RGB stripes pixel arrangement, and here comes the disappointment. This is the lowest placed phone from all the phones we've tested when it comes to brightness. 186 lux units. 186 lux units. Usually we require our phones to score around the 400 lux mark to be proper, to be high performing, but this one is all the way at the bottom. Keep in mind that Samsung's flagships reach around 800 lux, and here we're just treated to 186 at the total bottom of the scoring, which we have here. 500 phones, none of them is inferior to this one. Even the Realme C21, which is very cheap, the Poco M3, the Moto G6 and older phones, all of them are above it. So we may have a bit of a problem here. We may have a bit of an indoor cat, because indoors is decent, outdoors not that bright. Now if you go inside the phone, we have this IDA app here showing you that we're treated to a MediaTek Dimensity 810 CPU. It's a 6nm chip, octa-core, sounds pretty nice on paper. You can also find it on the Oppo A77, the Poco M4 Pro 5G and the Redmi Note 11S 5G. There are two versions of RAM, 6 and 4. We have the one with 6, LPDDR4X, and also 128 GB of storage. There's also a version with 64, UFS 2.2. There's a good piece of news. We have microSD here, and sadly we also have some lag. Now, every once in a while, if you have multiple apps open in the background, if they're performing updates, there will be some lag, especially when the apps are starting up. Now, aside from that, the games won't run that hot. I mean, don't expect much gaming to be done here, only basic casual games or even older shooters, but on a more modest detail level. I would say this is more of the blame of the screen rather than the CPU, which honestly I think can take it in the end. Now, when it comes to the benchmarks, we also did those. Let me start off by saying the device is a stranger to overheating, so at least there's that. As you can see, it beats a few high-profile phones, the OnePlus Nord CE2 Lite, Oppo Reno 7 Lite, and the Redmi Note 11 Pro, not bad, in A229. Scores below the Moto G82 5G and the OnePlus Nord CE2 5G. Now, a more relevant Geekbench 5 in the multi-core test, we're just above the older Realme 7 Pro and also above the Poco X3 and a few other handsets like the Redmi Note 9 Pro. Still, we're below the Vivo V21 and the Poco N4 Pro, which shares the CPU. In 3D Mark, which is interesting for the gamers, even though we won't do much gaming here, we're just above the Realme 8 Pro and the Nokia X20. Not a bad company, if I'm being honest. We are below the Galaxy A32 5G and below the Poco X3 NFC, plus below the older Realme 7 Pro. Once again, at least the temperature is fine. If you go here, you're going to just see 35.3 degrees Celsius in benchmark, so zero problems when it comes to heating. A good piece of news is that we have a large battery here, 5000 mAh, but the charging is a bit modest, 18 watts. Now, let's see the battery test that we did. We start off with the video playback. We have 23 hours and 40 minutes, that's huge. It's the 5th placed phone from the 500 we've tested. It's above basically all of the flagships this year. It also beats Realme 8 Pro, OnePlus Nord CE2 Lite and Poco M4 Pro. Somehow it's still below a few other phones like the Realme GT Neo 2 and the Oppo Reno 7 Lite. Still pretty impressive. However, there's a huge gap between video playback and continuous usage. A mere 10 hours and 8 minutes. I honestly expected more seeing the video playback. I mean, it's still above the ZTE Axon 20 and the Moto G60s, plus the Motorola Edge 30. However, at the same time, it's below a few other phones, quite a few other phones, as you can see for yourself here. I mean, considering it's placed on the 229 spot, it's about at the mid placement. It's below the Nokia X20, the Huawei Nova 9 SE, Honor Magic 4 Lite, some of the more relevant being those ones, and the Redmi 9C. The charging requires 2 hours and 4 minutes, it's quite long, and after 30 minutes you'll be at 34% and after 1 hour at 61%, which honestly is decent for, I would say, maybe a weekend of binging videos and still have some power left. Now let's talk about the acoustics that we have here. So we only have the bottom speaker here, and believe it or not, we also have an audio jack. And now let's listen to some music. As you can see, there is a way here of turning the volume all the way to 200%, which makes it honestly sound bad, sound broken. This bottom speaker isn't impressive, if I'm being totally honest. It's a bit of a letdown. So I honestly expected a bit more from this speaker. It sounds broken, without bass, without high notes. Well, maybe some high notes for the synthesizer, but not satisfying in the end. On par with the screen, I would say. It's very noisy, not loud. Only the highs are perceived, the mids and the lows not that much. It's a rather poor speaker. At least you will not cover it in landscape mode, or at least I don't think so. Now, when it comes to the volume, we did a bunch of tests. We have 89.5 decibels achieved with a typical acoustic sample test. Now this one beats the Motorola Moto G52 and the Redmi Note 11, scores below the OnePlus Nord CE2 5G and below the Realme C21. When it comes to gaming, things are a bit more decent at 98.1 decibels. This is actually a pretty solid result, meaning we're beating the Poco M4 Pro, Vivo Y70 and the Redmi Note 11. We're still below the Moto G32 and the Poco X3 NFC. Now we're off to the camera area. We start off with the selfie shooter, this 8 megapixel here in the punch hole, while at the back side, as I said before, there's a bit of a mystery. This is a 50 megapixel main camera, this is the 2 megapixel macro camera, this is the LED flash, but this one is a mystery. Some sites, some websites are saying it's a 2 megapixel camera used for bokeh. Others are saying it's a telephoto camera, others are saying it's a 0.3 megapixel cameras with an unknown purpose. My theory is that it's a 2 megapixel camera, even though the camera itself tends to offer extra zoom at times, making me believe that the whole telephoto theory is fine. This handset can only film in Full HD, no 4K here. It takes macro shots, it has a text scanner, panorama, time-lapse, a pro mode, also slow-mo feature, and at the same time portrait shots and night mode are also available. So let's check out the gallery and see the shots we have here for you. Okay, so let's start with the photos taken during the day. And I have to say that the selfies taken here aren't half bad. I mean, for an 8 megapixel camera, they're quite decent. Of course, you will not see pore details, but the texture of the hair and the eyes are fine for me. The face expression is pretty well represented. Also, the bokeh is correctly applied. As you can see, the background is correctly blurred behind the scenery here. Okay, so behind the person, excuse me. And now, as you can see, we have some very solid close-ups, and this is not an isolated case. We have this one, but we also have multiple ones to reveal here. So all of these are close-ups, which show excellent colors, details, and even a perspective here that creates a more artistic photo. You can clearly tell by texture that we're dealing here with wood or metal or plastic when need be. So we got two things covered, decent selfies and nice close-ups all around. Now let's see what other things we can see from these captures. We don't have an ultra-wide camera, even though we got accustomed to having one. But I have to say that the zoom is quite decent at about 2-3x. Leading me to believe that there may be some water to that theory about the telephoto camera, even though it's probably not. I have to say that I expected the sky to be messed up color-wise. It's quite realistic, as you can see here. I also didn't notice as much overexposure and oversaturation as I was expecting, judging strictly by the handset's price. However, every once in a while, the colors will be a bit overblown here. This green is too intense compared to the real one, so my praise only applies for select frames from this large gallery. And even more shots are available here, as you can see for yourself. The colors are satisfying. I would say that the color palette is pretty decent, and particularly the greens are well represented when they're not in the full strength of the sun, which can overexpose or oversaturate them. I would say we are pretty much on par with the Redmi Note 11 and Honor Magic 4 Lite. That's the level we're at. We're beating the Poco M3 generation from last year, and we're pretty close to the Poco M4, if not above it. Now, we have the nighttime gallery here, and this is a regular shot, while this one is the night mode shot, which actually reveals the LEDs of this logo here, which you couldn't see if it weren't for the night mode. To be honest, without the night mode, the photos are nothing to write home about, and the zoom is less impressive during the nighttime compared to the daytime ones. I mean, these photos may look fine, but if you look closely, you're going to see some oversized streetlight halos and some odd colors here and there, a bit too warm for my taste. But once again, if you're not happy with a shot like this one, everything gets pretty much solved with the night mode. So for example here, I'm not happy with the size of the streetlight halos. I apply night mode and voila, the size gets decent and it accentuates the texture of this column here. So it will be quite good when it comes to architectural shots. To be honest, I wasn't as impressed by the nighttime photos as I was by the daytime ones, but things will be definitely saved once you start applying the night mode. It does show its lower mid-range attributes when it comes to the low light captures. Now let's go to the videos. So we're only stuck with Full HD here, just 30 frames per second, no love for 4K. And let's see what we've got. So let's turn down the volume a little bit and start off with a focus test. Alternating between this fruit and the background in quite a timely manner. fast and accurate, so the focus is spot on. Now we also have some nature here, a decent level of pan and zoom. One thing I actually appreciated here was how fluid the zoom is. You don't feel the steps when zooming in. And I also didn't notice any sort of large oversaturation, overexposure of the vegetation compared to the photos. Okay, another beautiful scenery here. I'm actually digging the texture of the water at this dam. The sky is surprisingly good looking. I'm talking about the color. And check out how fluid the zoom is, even compared to some pricier mid-rangers out there. Of course, noisy when you get real close, but the fluidity of the zoom is quite impressive. Next up, we got this shot of a bunch of leaves, all about the focus here. Pretty crude leaves, color-wise, in a nice manner of speaking. And let's see if we also have a stabilization test of sorts. It's probably this one, as we're panning at first and then walking about to see what the camera can do. Obviously, we're lacking optical image stabilization, and you can tell that. You can feel the left, right foot, right foot every time we walk. However, the image doesn't vibrate or trepidate or lose focus as you would expect from a camera lacking proper stabilization. However, the shot feels a bit washed out on account of the strong sun descending on us. All in all, as far as Full HD capture goes, not that bad. I would say between the Poco M3 and Poco M4 generation. This is a nighttime video. Not one of the best. The colors are a bit warm for my taste. And let's see what else is underwhelming here. Okay, so it's noisy. It's also a bit foggy. I'm not sure if you can see that on this small screen. And shaky. The lights are pretty big in the distance, and the focus isn't exactly accurate in this case. I have to admit as well that the trepidation of the image and the vibration when walking around isn't as big as I expected, particularly for nighttime capture. When everything's said and done, we are at the level of the Redmi Note 11 and Honor Magic 4 Lite, stuck between the Poco M3 and Poco M4 generation, with a bit more towards the Poco M4. When it comes to connectivity, the selling point here is obviously the 5G connectivity. We have dual nano SIM card slots and Wi-Fi dual band. There's Bluetooth 5.2 available, and unlike what you're going to see online in the specs listed on some sites, we do have NFC for your payment needs. There's GPS, GLONASS, Galileo and BDS, and the port at the bottom is an USB-C 2.0. The calls were, well, just okay as far as the clarity and volume are concerned. And when it comes to the speed test, let's see some of the results we achieved. So as far as Wi-Fi goes, these are the results we reached. 268 megapixel download and 353 megapixel in upload. And when it comes to the 5G tests, we actually have some pretty impressive results here. Above all my expectations, 472 megapixel in download and 58.5 megapixel in upload. This is an excellent level of 5G for a handset price below $200. As far as the software is concerned, this Realme handset comes with your typical Realme UI 3.0 applied on top of Android 12. As usual, Realme UI means you're going to have a lot of customization for icons. And I do say a lot because we can tweak them quite a lot. From here you can play with the wallpapers, widgets, layout, transitions and more, as you can see for yourself here. These are the widgets that we're treated with, sadly not yet stacked or 3D. For multitasking we have these windows here. You can also apply split screen, and you can also apply pop-up windows triggered from the sidebar, which is an optional feature. You can also resize your windows and move it around as you please. Now, if you want to give the device an extra kick when it comes to resources, you go here and you attribute it extra RAM up to 5 gigs, virtual RAM of course. For security, you have the side place fingerprint scanner, which is activated like this. It may feel snappy, but every once in a while it bothered me that it did not respond correctly to my touch. And aside from that, I would say it's a pretty typical Android experience. Here you have the connectivity options. This is the customization area. We're lacking an always on display on account of lacking an AMOLED. We have some color options. We have the display settings, notification, password and security. There's a privacy dashboard, of course. We also have the location area, special features which include split screen, flexible windows, smart sidebar and a kit space, plus a simple mode, and of course digital well-being and parental control. There's also realme Lab for dual mode audio. You can connect wired and wireless headphones to the device. Now, we do have Bloatware here, as you can see, pre-installed. Only 2 applications matter from all this list. There's the phone manager with a bunch of useful tools which will keep the device's performance in check. You can do a one-tap optimization, do a virus scan, clean up the storage, and you got payment protection and SOS here. The other one is for the gamers. You have a game toolkit, you have a bunch of auto resolution, game focus, and even a game recording feature, and this tool will be triggered from the side when you play a game. So for example, if I start playing Asphalt, I should be able to, as you can see here, we have a special engine triggered, and to be honest, more options than I was expecting considering the low price of the device. You can see the temperature here, you can see the battery level, you can do some touch optimization and screen recording, which once again not bad for a handset of this price. And now I think it's time for the verdict. Okay, so as we talk about the verdict, don't forget our YouTube channel, which is here, and we have quite a few videos to show you unboxings, reviews and the like. Okay, so pros and cons. This is a comfy phone to use on account of the flat frame. It has a pretty okay performance if you look only at the benchmarks. It's, I would say, decently future-proof for an entry-level phone. It also has a long battery life when it comes strictly to the video playback time. I would also probably mention the fact that the main camera is quite solid at 50 megapixels and it's very solid close-ups. I'm also saying that the night mode is efficient when it comes to the photos. Not bad videos, I would say 50% of them are actually solid, fast 5G connectivity and a customizable OS and UI. Now on the cons, it's obviously not a bright screen, this one here. There may be some lag here and there while using multiple apps and having multiple apps open in the background. The charging is long, the continuous usage is underwhelming. I'm talking about the PC mark. And at the same time, I should probably also mention the fact that I didn't quite enjoy the selfies as much as I would have expected compared to the video selfie, for example. Also, I have to say the videos are a bit shaky, and the fact that we don't have clear specs for the camera here. Some websites contradict themselves over this here, and a bunch of bloatware, as I mentioned before. So there you have it. This has been the verdict for the phone. My idea is that we're dealing with a 5G handset. That's the core experience here. 5G with a solid main camera and a lot of hours of video playback, but only indoors, since the screen doesn't cut it outside when it comes to the brightness. I think it's going to be a phone for maybe an elderly citizen who likes to watch videos on the go and video call his grandkids via 5G, because apparently the videos on the selfie camera are quite decent. So that's pretty much it, and the budget is also an important aspect. Also good for people who travel a lot by train. They can watch a lot of videos without 22-hour battery life in video playback. That's it from us. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel gsndon.com. Goodbye.